I would like to talk about aphasia, and I would like to bring in more information about it. The mind can visualize and make so many stories, art, and ideas. But what would happen if that was all gone? What would happen where they see nothing? The first mention of any form of aphasia was around the 1800s. Francis Gallen uh, talked with various of his colleagues and found that some of them could not really see any form of mind eye, and he wrote that in his own book, which is The Statistics of the Mental Image. It took around 200 two, it took around the time of 2005 in order for any form of actual interest to continue with the idea of aphasia. This happened when a professor found someone lost their mind's eye when they had a minor surgery, and they talked about it in a Scientific America article. Because of this, in 2015, more and more interest has finally been proven and more and more or less been studied. The main things I want to talk about are why it happens, the people have it, and why it's important. So, with that, to learn about the human brain is an important not only for the growth of the mind, but to also help the ones that have mental or physical problems with the brain. We need to know what the people with aphasia, what they're bad or good at when it comes to various academics, like how do they do in tests, or how do they recognize or memorize certain materials, or what difficulties will they have. They can also have problems with just normal day life, like roads, locations, or even loved ones. How will they remember the face of it? So we need to find out various tricks in order to learn from it and bring out certain materials in order to help people who don't have it. This is some of the tricks that we can see in an article with the Very Well Mind. We also need to kind of understand why it could happen. And from what I can gather, it mostly happens when you're born. But we have seen that it can happen from various trauma to the brain. But from my research, we also found out that there's an actual spectrum of it. Some people are able to memorize certain sounds, but some cannot memorize taste or smells with their mind. It's certainly interesting. In fact, some people who don't have a mind's eye can more or less figure it out eventually, can remember sounds but not smells. Of course, there's also a belief that depression or anxiety or mental stuff, psychological stuff, can also deal with the fact of aphasia, but there needs to be more study on the subject. And since aphasia is a rarely studied form of and only recently introduced, we need to figure out more of it eventually. But it's important that we learn now. Now, with that, I feel like we should talk about various people who have aphasia, since it's important to figure out that even if people have it, it is more of something just people need to learn to adapt from it, and it isn't something that will always affect them. In fact, some people don't even go their whole lives figuring it out. And Ed Poldrick, the former CEO of Pixar, found he had no mind's eye and did a survey learning which some of his colleagues had a stronger mind's eye. Out of the 540 colleagues, he found, which he's talked about in a BBC News health outline. Other people who also have this are Blake Ross, which is one of the co-owners of Firefox, Zelda Williams, which is the daughter of the late Robin Williams, Galen Hank, which is an animator, author, and illustrator, and Niall Kelly, which is an expert on memorology and memory of the mind. So she is very knowledgeable about this whole thing. With that, I just wanted to bring in more light about this interesting aspect of the human mind. We learn about we learn about the history that Reese Sparks White studied, and the date, and more of it to this day. Why it's important to learn more will help others, and why it happens, and the spectrum around visualization. This is what I wanted to show in this speech. I say it is something more unique, and it isn't something that with the mind, and it's something that we can easily deal with. But it's interesting to know about it and how we can learn how to think more about our memory and mind.